Welcome back. We are in the middle of a series on skepticism, and we are looking at this handout. In the middle of the handout on popular skeptical responses. Last time we spent a good amount of time talking about the responses to "there are so many views." If you recall, we said that there are not many basic views, only two. And these two basic views are either all is eternal or only some is eternal. And we did a little logic to show that nothing is eternal means all is temporal, means all came into being, means all came into being from non-being. And we said that that was not possible. That's like getting something from nothing. And so at least something must be eternal. And we said that was clear to reason. Now, what that something is, it's either everything or only some things. And then we said there are many degrees of rational consistency with which a basic view is held. All right, so we went over that. We spent a lot of time. I'll refresh your memory. We had the square of opposition. Let me pull that up for you, if I can. And here's what we ended up with. We had two. Let me make it a little bit smaller to fit it into the screen for you. And we had two positions here. All is eternal and only some is eternal. And we said there are many degrees of rational consistency with which a basic view is held. We could put all the world's religions under these pink positions. Now, why am I bringing this up again? Because if we go back to the handout and we look at the second skeptical claim, it doesn't matter which view you hold, they're all the same. What kind of view are we talking about? Usually we're talking about views about reality, maybe religious views. Remember, I also said that this is coffee house skepticism. I have to tell a funny story here. I was reading a book called All the Gods Are One. I think that's the title of the book. All the Gods Are One. And the thesis of the book was that Americans don't really know that much about the world's religions and tend to say all the religions are the same, they're all one. And so I'm reading this book. The thesis is they're not the same. These world religions are not the same. And a person who worked at the coffee shop came over to me and said, "Oh, what are you reading?" And I said, "Oh, I'm reading this book on religion." And he said, "Oh, they're all the same." Literally said, all the religions are the same. And so that was the thesis of the book, was no, they're not. So I felt like handing him the book and saying, maybe you need to read this. So let's think about this. It doesn't matter which view you hold, they're all the same. Is that true? We should be skeptical about this, right? Is that true? So let's look at response one. It says, this may be true on a practical or a psychological level, but even here, only in the short run. And let me pull this square back up again. I want to show you something and give you an example. If we were to look at spiritual monism, one of the positions under spiritual monism would be Hinduism. Philosophical Hinduism says there's one thing, and this one thing is spirit. There is no matter. And Hinduism is also a religion. It's not just a philosophy, it's a religion. And people do certain things. They maybe go to their temple, worship the gods, which are all one, and maybe eat special food, wear special clothing, have special festivals. Now, if you go down here and look at theism, Judaism is a version of theism, and guess what? They go to their temple and worship their god. They eat special foods and wear special clothing and have special festivals. It's the same thing, right? Well, no, on a philosophical level, they're contradictory positions. All is eternal goes with Hinduism, and only some is eternal goes with Judaism. So on a practical level, what they're doing may look similar, and on a psychological level, these religions may be meeting certain needs that they have, but this is only in the short run. In the long run, they have deep philosophical disagreements. Hinduism says all is God, and Judaism says not all is God. So response 2 says, if large-scale, long-term differences in human lives are not important, like all is eternal or only some is eternal, then nothing is important, including anything you say. Now, someone might think, oh, that's kind of mean. insensitive to say that. But let's think about this. It's not meant to be insensitive. It's meant to say that when we speak from that house, our window. Remember, the house had the foundation and the structure, and the window where you're looking out, you're also speaking from that house. That's your world and life view. And the foundation is either all is eternal or only some is eternal. So if those foundations don't matter, then what we say, speaking from that position, doesn't matter either. So what this is really saying is the most important things are those differences in philosophies, and we should speak about them. So at the end of this, we're not going to let this person get away with saying it doesn't matter which view you hold, they're all the same, because they're not the same. And these are the most important claims we could make. Remember, presupposition is the first and deepest disagreement among human beings. And if we can't talk about these, we can't talk about anything else. So we're not going to let this go as a popular skeptical claim. We're going to say, I'm sorry, come, let's reason together about these basic views. Let's first get common ground, though. All right, third. These are going to go a little more quickly now. The third is, who's to say which view is right? Okay, I hear it that way in my head. I hear this little attitude, who's to say which view is right? And who are you to say it? Right? So this is a claim about authority. And notice it's putting the authority on a person. Who are you? You're just a freshman, right? Now, our response is going to put the authority back on reason. Remember, reason is transcendental. It's authoritative and self-attesting. So it's not who is to say. It's not a person who's to say. It's what is to say. It's not a who is to say, but it's a what that is to say. And the what is reason. Reason, the laws of thought must be observed if we are to avoid talking nonsense. So the laws of thought are available to all thinkers, and that's our source of authority. So we're not going to let someone say who's to say. That is making authority personal. And if it is up to the person, then you're right, I am no authority. But if the authority is reason, it's not personal, and it's logical, and it's something we all have access to. We can all test to see if we're making contradictory statements, right? You're all an authority in contradictions. All right, so it's not who is to say, it's what is to say. Reason, the laws of thought must be observed if we're to avoid talking nonsense. Right? This should be giving you a little more confidence, a little more competence in the use of reason. All right, the fourth skeptical claim goes like this. It's all a matter of interpretation. Right? This sounds kind of smart, and you might hear this a lot at the university. Postmodernism is a position that kind of makes this claim that everything is interpretation. It's all interpretation. We're gonna say yes, that's true. It is, but guess what? That's true. Philosophy doesn't end here, though. It begins here, and that's the job of philosophy, to test every interpretation for rational consistency. So every interpretation must be tested for rational consistency. Guess what? Some interpretations are better than others. So let's test them. Come, let's reason together again. So we're not going to let that be the end of the conversation. That's the beginning of the conversation. It's all a matter of interpretation. Yes, it is. And we interpret everything in light of our basic beliefs, and we could test our basic beliefs. So let's look at this next one. It's all relative. It also sounds kind of smart. It's a very popular thing to say, right? Especially if you just want to get out of a conversation. It's all relative. Relative implies relationship, right? So everything is relative in terms of related to. So we're going to say, yes, it is. It's relative to one's basic beliefs. So your ethics, your politics, your values, your attitudes are relative to your foundational beliefs. And guess what? These foundational beliefs, your basic beliefs, can be tested for meaning. So again, come, let's reason together. All right, this sixth one. I don't know what I believe. This is sort of like the agnostic claim. The agnostic is saying, I don't know what I believe. So is that cause for global skepticism? Maybe this is a person that says, I don't know what I believe, and I've been pretty thoughtful, and so I don't see how anybody could know what they believe. But look at the responses. We do have basic beliefs. They're held more or less consciously. We're more or less aware of them. And we can know our basic beliefs by looking at our actions. Again, actions imply that we make choices. Choices imply that we have values. And values implies that we have a highest value, which is our view of the good. And our view of the good implies that we have a view of what humans are and what ultimate reality is like. So if we say we don't know what we believe, we're just not very conscious of it, and we need to become more conscious of what we believe. And hopefully that's what this class will help you do. And then this last statement is kind of a non-position, so it gets a non-response, and it goes like this: I'll go with the flow. Maybe you know some go with the flowers. Maybe you are a go with the flower. Probably not if you've persevered this long in this series. Going with the flow is the simple, easy, what comes natural approach. Going with the flow will take you down the river, and at the end of the river there's a waterfall, and you will go over the waterfall and you will suffer. Going with the flow is going through life without a goal or a plan. And usually people without a plan crash and burn. So the go with the flowers, there's a little bit of hope that maybe after suffering they'll remember reason and maybe a conversation you had with them, and they'll come back to you. So if they say, I'll go with the flow, you might be inclined to say, okay, go ahead, perhaps we'll meet again. And maybe we'll meet again after you suffer a bit and you want to reconsider. Maybe you want to talk about the good and the goal. All right, so these are the popular skeptical claims. At the end of this video, you should be able to respond with response 1 and response 2 to each of these popular skeptical claims. Now, I would like you to put these into your long-term memory. And when you hear somebody say it's all a matter of interpretation, be prepared to respond. When you hear somebody say it's all relative, be prepared to respond. Even if you don't say it to them, say it to yourself. Why? Because that's how we're going to fight skepticism. We're going to fight it by having a response to it. All right, so next time we're going to talk about the sources of skepticism. And these are deeper, more deeply rooted sources of skepticism in the history of philosophy, and they do lead to intellectual despair, which is hopelessness. So we want to overcome intellectual despair, and we want to move towards gaining knowledge. So once we can overcome these philosophical sources of skepticism, we can get a definition of knowledge, and we can start moving towards getting some knowledge. We actually do have some knowledge. At this point, you should know that something must be eternal. You should know that A is A. You should know the laws of thought. So you should have a list of things you're gaining confidence in saying that you know at this point. All right, so next time, skepticism in its serious forms.